Hi, I'm Kenneth Handy. You may look at me or my present circumstances and think that I might be a decent guy. I'm an electrician, a husband, a homeowner, and I have served as a deacon in my church. You would not normally have guessed that I have also been inmate 0165216, convicted and sentenced to death, and spent 34 years incarcerated. Been to some of the very worst places that a human can go in this life. But this life has been recreated. I've been given enough grace to still be here. We, my co-host Cleveland, and our team want to welcome you to this podcast to find out that anyone still breathing should be deemed redeemable. The mission of this podcast is to testify of God's love, grace, and power through a raw, personal, faith-driven conversation. We will use the story of transformation from a death row inmate to a life of hope and freedom to show others that a different life is possible. Welcome to Deem Redeemable.
Hello, and welcome to Deemed Redeemable. I am your co-host, Cleveland.
And I'm Kenneth Handy.
And today we are here to share
a lot about what it takes to become a changed or recreated person, but it starts with what's happened in my life.
Today's episode is called What is Truth?
We will be talking about what happens when someone is in a bad place in life and doesn't know how to get to that good place. And so we have to start with what is truth? And that's a heavy question. It was shared by a Roman prefect, and he asked Jesus Christ that same question. And I think it's good that any person that is in any place in life that they're unhappy or they feel like their life is going nowhere, they should ask that very question.
So I think before we get into the details, why don't you share a little bit about yourself, your life, and what inspired you to take on this project?
Okay, be glad to. I was a decent enough kid, but that didn't keep me from taking a wrong turn in life. And when I say a wrong turn, I went all the way down to what most people would call the bottom of the barrel. I was convicted at the age of 19 of murder in the first degree, and I was sentenced to death row. And I ended up spending 34 years incarcerated, and I have been free for over 5 years, and my life has been recreated, not since the point of being released, but long before that. While I was still incarcerated, change happened in me. And what I learned was it wasn't about just me. It was about the actions, the thoughts, and what followed was a recreation of life.
All right. So we want to go ahead and hop into the questions?
Sure.
All right. So the very first question, which I feel is trying to get straight to the point. What was the crime that you were accused and found guilty of?
Okay. I was accused and found guilty of murder in the first degree with a secondary charge of armed robbery. And this happened in North Carolina, and the original crime happened in 1986. I was convicted and sentenced to death row in March 31st of 1987. So my first day on death row was April Fool's Day, 1987.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened that day? Like what was your experience that day in court?
We can do that. My experience that day was very surreal. I can remember the night going to death row, and I can remember standing in the courtroom when the judge banged a gavel and said, "May God have mercy on your soul." That was really like it wasn't, it was like a nightmare, except it wasn't a nightmare. It was actually happening. And I was 19, had been alcoholically inclined, and therefore I had still dregs of, monsterized drinking and drugs in my system for a long period of time. And here I was at 19, sentenced to die. You know, it was like it wasn't true, yet it was really happening.
How? Well, I can't even imagine what it must have felt like at 19 going before this judge who's telling you you thrown your life away, basically.
Yes, it was quite the drama, you know. Um, I
Is
also
drama
have
the
to
correct
say,
word?
go ahead.
Is that is drama the correct word?
Yes, because for me, it was like watching a movie, because you're saying, this isn't really happening. That's what my mind was saying, because it was rejecting the truth of what was happening.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine it's easy to digest, to come to terms with that sentence you were handed that day.
No. And of course, growing up, I'd had a lot of problems. I'd been in a lot of little scrapes, but I'd never hurt anybody this bad. And the other thing was is that I'd gotten out of enough scrapes that I thought, oh, they're going to end up, something else is going to happen here, and they're going to end up slapping me on the hands, or telling me don't do this again or whatever, because I still had a childlike mind that could not grasp the gravity and the responsibility of what it meant to live as an adult in society where other people were affected by my actions.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, I think that this is like a great point for me to ask the following question, which is, from your point of view, what happened the night that the crime was committed? Or what happened that night that led to your
Okay.
sentence?
Um, I was drunk, using drugs that night with what they called my crime partner, or partner in crime, however that goes, my co-defendant. How's that? And we were partying at a party with somebody, and we had attempted to start to help somebody, and a decision was made that we were going to rob this person. And this person gave some uh, resistance, and this person had exhibited some unnecessary traits for me that made it okay for me to rob him. But at the same time, there was never an intent to truly harm the guy, except when it happened in a blur and a rush. And when the guy made his, let's call them, unwanted advances towards me, it blew up into something that it never should have been in the first place. And before I knew it, he was dead, and I was out of my mind trying to figure out what to do next.
Do you feel that you were truly honest with yourself and with everyone else about what happened that night?
It was hard to be truly honest because, as I said, being so alcoholically inclined, I was out of my mind drunk that night. And when I say out of my mind, I can't remember all of it. So when I'm questioned by police and DAs and other people, I'm only piecing together little pieces that I remember, and hearing what other people are saying the facts of the case are, and then trying to figure out what really happened. Why did I blank on this guy? Why did I go berserk? Why did, these are good questions for anybody when they want to know why I did something so, I would say stupid, but callous and cruel are two better words for them. So,
I agree that's That's definitely the words that most people would attach to the crime, to the events that transpired. But looking back, how do you view your testimony and defense during your trial? Do you think, because I did read a lot of the court documents, I did, sit here and go through them, but to me, it's very obvious that there were a lot of things that must have been left out because there's just inconsistencies. So what do you think about your trial?
I think the inconsistencies happen because of fear. Fear that I was a monster, fear of looking at my actions honestly, not just for other people, but the idea of I'm facing death. I'm facing life imprisonment. I was 19. I don't know if you read the first trial or the second trial, but irregardless, there's tons of fear involved. Fear that I'm not going to be able to attain freedom again. Fear that they're going to kill me. Fear that I'm going to waste away in prison regardless. Um, and then there's the idea that anytime we're in trouble, we want to find a way out very quickly. You know, please don't be true, but the true is the only thing that will set us free.
Right. And I mean, you mentioned you were 19 when you went to prison. So
Yes, ma'am.
that, and regardless of age, that sentence that you were handed in court that day, like I said, I can't imagine what it must have felt like, but coming to terms with also having to fill the gaps of everything that happened that night, because as you mentioned, you were drunk. I I can't imagine how absolutely hard it must have been. And this is something that I personally wanted to ask. What was that point in how much time happened from the point that you were handed your sentence to the point where you actually had to look at yourself and be honest with yourself and say, "Holy crap, I'm going to be here." Like, there might not be a way out of this. There might not be a point where I'm not going to live with the consequences that were handed to me, whether or not I believe I got something fair.
Okay. That's a very fair and good question, especially in my case. So follow me on a journey. I go to death row at 19 and no, I'm not willing to look at myself. I do not have the capacity to look at myself or my actions because all I can think about is getting a drink or drug to change how I think and how I feel. So when I went to prison, it was survival mode. So the first thing I can tell you, I was high the first day I got to prison because I'm an addict. So an addict is going to find a way. If there are drugs to be gotten, I found them, you know. And so through that process, I spent the next couple of years on death row, spending my whole time trying to get psychiatric drugs, pot, um, cancer patients drugs that they didn't want to take so I could buy them somehow, making alcohol, homemade alcohol in prison, and trying to fill up me with that so that I never had to look or feel. That was not the case. About right before I turned 21 years old, I had gotten in trouble and they had locked me up even from death row. The death row that I spent time on, I was out with uh, 15 other death row inmates for daytime activities. So 4 hours here and 4 hours there, and they would walk us together, shut down the hallways, and then take us to a chow hall so we could eat. It was easier on the staff to do this, and they figured if we're all sentenced to death, who cares if someone actually kills the other? So it's like it's doing the state a favor in a way. Um, Unfortunately, that gives a lot of room to interchange with inmates who are in the kitchen so you can get things, or in the hospital, or at wherever you have access. So I had a lot of access to a lot of different drugs as long as I had the finances or means to get them. Right before I turned 21, as I got locked up for an offense in prison, um, I think it was a drug related offense. And being right there, my 21st birthday, it's just kind of hit me that I'm locked up while I'm locked up. It didn't seem like, well, wait a minute, this just doesn't seem right. And I had the feeling, because I had talked with other inmates, and they had basically told me the truth that, hey, kid, you pled guilty to first degree murder. You're not going home. You're not getting out of here. You did the state's job for them. You're just waiting for them to kill you. That was it. Yeah. Yeah. So, of course, I'm trying to look not at that, but just trying to feel better, trying to think better. So, at that time, what happened for me was I started reading the Bible more. I was saved as a kid, yet I had gone so far off of that track, but I didn't have an answer. I had tried to um, find something in other religions, hoping for a panacea or some magic pixie dust to fix me, change me, or fix my situation, but there was none. I woke up every morning with the thought that these people intend to kill me. And then when you look out the little slit of a window that points out towards Western Boulevard in Raleigh, North Carolina, and somebody's on death row just about to be executed, and you see two sets of people, one having a candlelight vigil, and then the other set with signs saying, kill the person in other terms, and you have these two opposing groups, and then you never see the person that you've seen before because he's dead. It starts to hit reality that that's what's going to happen to you.
Was that kind of, seeing or knowing that someone else had, they basically got to that point where they were executed? Was that kind of a turning point for you where you maybe felt like that might have been rock bottom, or was there a specific point in your time that you felt was, I mean, obviously being in prison is already pretty heavy, but was there a point that was just such a turning point for you where you thought, I need to stop avoiding and stop feeding myself these delusions and trying to suppress my feelings about this with drugs and alcohol? Was there a point where you were like, I need to turn, even
No,
if I'm
I
going to
wasn't
stay
that
here?
mature, Cleveland. To be honest, no. I was not that mature. All I had was small experiences. And these small experiences would build up over time before I could piece all of this together. Um, I might have been 19 when I went to death row, but I would gather at this point in life that I probably had the maturity level emotionally and mentally of less than a 12-year-old. I would absolutely say that that's true. It wasn't until I was 30 years old that I had this epiphany experience, one especially with God, in a way that was different than all the other little peaceful pieces of information. Not that I hadn't had experiences, not where I didn't understand truths, but this one was where I seen myself as I really was. And then I could change. Because we say at the beginning of this broadcast, what is truth? But I didn't know what truth was. So I couldn't pinpoint it or say that, because of course I couldn't. I'm building up lies as fast as I can build them up in my own mind about myself.
Right. And do you think that there was a pride factor in that within yourself? Of you just being too proud?
Fear is more than, I want to say pride, but I think all of my pride has always come from fear. You know, when I get angry, it's normally because I got scared and I would push it inside, and then it would become anger because I wouldn't have no place to release it. I wouldn't be able. I could talk about my fear. I could share my fears with you. No, men don't do that. Not the way I grew up. And then I'm in a place where um, you don't tell other people you're scared, Cleveland.
Right.
So, and if I can't do that on simple things like big Bubba might beat me up, that's a scary thing. But
Yeah.
think about uh, is Ken a monster? That's even more scary. That's something
Yeah.
I can't talk about with anybody. So,
Yeah. Well, there's
so no
something that
pride, just lots of fear.
there's something that I have always my dad always told me, which was you are your biggest best friend, but you're also your worst enemy. So you're the one who has to, at the
Yes.
end of the day, the only one that's never going to escape you is yourself. You can't escape yourself. So you better make sure that you like yourself, because otherwise. And so, yeah, I can't imagine asking yourself something like that, which at this point, I want to kind of ask, are you able to have those conversations with yourself now and with others to talk about your feelings? Because, it you were you were in a very scary, very dark place. And like you said, you can't talk about those things in the inside. But what about now? Now you've been out for a few years. Has that changed?
Hmm. It's a good question because we're doing that now. I'm talking about fear. The real four-letter word starting with
Right.
F. But at the same time, you got to think about this. I would never have gotten released had not a massive major change happened to me. Because by the time that my epiphany had happened, there was another transformation that happened from death row all the way till I was 30. So for 11 years, I was not only drinking and drugging, but I was accepting the model of behavior and the ideology of the people around me in order to survive. When I first came to death row, another man that had come to death row when he was 19 pulled me aside. And we had talked, and what he told me will always stick with me. He had explained what type of people there were in prison. He would call some waterheads. He would call some snitches. He would call some people solid. And he would call some people a term that what used to be called convicts. And he would describe them and say what these things were and how it would affect my time, either to deal with them or to be considered that. And then he looked me in the eye and he said, you need to choose what you're going to be and then be it. In my eyes, the only real safe prospect was to try to be a convict or solid people. That would mean that if you told somebody you'd do something, you did it. If somebody did something, you never told, no matter what. It also meant that there were times that if you borrowed money, you paid it. It didn't matter what it took. So for the next 11 years, I became what I considered a convict. I loaned money. I sold dope. I turned police into people who would bring me dope. I was the dope man the week that I had this change on the prison camp that I was on, and God got a hold of me and changed my mind immediately. Um, I shot dope in prison. I I shot a whole lot of things in prison. I shot anything I could get. There was a time I even shot Benadryl into my veins. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So I played the psychiatrist for up to 8 different medications at a time. Some of them were okay and some of them were not. You know, they just treated you different ways. I didn't care as long as I changed my mental or my mood. And I have done even nastier things to people. I've been in 2 racial riots. I have, I didn't really have a choice in my mind because I rolled with a faction of people and I was born with a different skin color than other people. So in order to survive, you do what you have to do. And unfortunately, and actually fortunately, God actually carried me through a lot of stuff that I never should have got through. And that's why we're doing this podcast, because I've had more than one life that's been saved, you know.
What role did facing the truth about your actions play in your faith?
At first, not a lot. Um, I was mentioning that before I was 21, I had started to have an experience with God. So when I got into jail and was about to go on the stand, I was sitting there praying to God and said, "Hey, look, I don't know what I'm supposed to say because, of course, I don't remember half of it. I'm piecing together, so I feel like I'm making up stuff." And so I swear I felt I heard God tell me, go up on the stand and tell him the unadulterated truth about that night. Tell him you went up there to rob that guy and it ended up bad. But that was your intention. And I told God, I can't do that because fear stepped in. Anyways, so I went up and I didn't say that that's why I went up there. I just told him the other part of it, that he had made unwanted plans or advances towards me and it ended up bad. And then the idea to rob him came after the fact because I was afraid that if I was afraid of 2 things. I was afraid that that would say that I was a monster. And I was afraid that they were going to send me right back to death row. I come to find out later that had I walked up and on to that stand and said, "Hey, I went up there with the intent to rob him and he bucked and he ended up dead because I blanked out because of my emotions, because of the alcohol, because of the drugs, because whatever. I just flipped." I probably would have been out sooner. I didn't know this. I didn't know much about the murder robbery rule in North Carolina. I didn't know that they would have only sentenced me for the murder and not for the armed robbery. Didn't know that I could have been out of prison maybe 7 to 10 years earlier. It actually could have worked that way had I done what I believed God told me. But instead, fear made me do something different. So now, after that experience, here I am at the end of what you said earlier. You said rock bottom. Well, I don't believe in rock
Mhm.
bottom. I don't think. I think rock bottom is death. Okay. I have never been to a place so low that I could not go lower. I promise you. I'm serious. It's like you hit the bottom and you're like, "Oh, it's horrible." And then you find a trap door to just go deeper, you know? I'm serious. You ever heard that adage where people say that the first rule of getting out of holes is to stop digging? I don't get that concept. you know? So, but yeah, I think that the first time I looked at myself and my actions was I had gone on a spree in prison, blew all my money, couldn't re-up with the officer that was bringing me dope. I had broken my word to my business partner in prison.
Oof.
Okay. Owed a bunch of money for drugs and gambling and didn't have a means to get that money back. And I'm fiending. I'm fiending for dope. I need something, or I have to do what? I have to look at how I feel, what the actual thoughts that are coming to me are. What's going on inside Kenneth? And a guy came by and said, "Hey, man, you want to go to a 12-step meeting?" I was like, "No, that's not for me." He said, "Well, at least go to church with me tonight." I was like, I wasn't as afraid of church as I was the 12-step meeting. I don't know why. But, and I went to church that night, and a volunteer coming in from prison, I swear this guy was telling my story, except he was free. He was free talking about hurting somebody, going to prison, talking to God, and asking God to change him and his whole life. And that God did. And now he was coming back into prison to tell us that God wanted to do that for me. I have no idea why this happened, because it hadn't happened till now. But I believed what he was saying to me. I don't know why. I just know that I believed, and I stood there in a room of 95 people and prayed to God and said, "I need you to change me." And I felt something click inside. It's weird because it was almost like somebody flipped a switch. And from that night, for the next 26 years, I never had a drug or a drink.
Now
Until
hold
you told me
on.
last
Me?
year. Yes, you.
Me?
until
No,
you,
no, 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 no.
until I
I'll blame this
grabbed
on.
a beer up in my misery and told me, "What the heck are you doing?" That was not the exact words you used, but we'll use that for PG purposes. I think they were a little heavier. You and my niece Kayla
Yeah,
looking at me. You remember? I remember that day very well.
I remember. I remember because I was very concerned because I have been around people who have that problem, and
Okay,
I
good.
I have been around people who, sorry, wrong wordage. I have been around people who are sober. And from my understanding is I can't just have a little bit, because to me a little bit is opening the floodgates. I can't just do a little bit of this or a little bit of that. There is no little bit. A little bit is just the beginning.
Yeah, that's me.
And I love you, and I was concerned because I just saw you very nonchalantly like pick up the beer, and I was like, what is he doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I texted your brother in that moment, and I was like, hey, like, not that he was much help. I was like, hey,
I'm sure he wasn't.
I was like, hey, what it, is he okay? Like, should I be doing something? Because I I wanted to help you,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't think that approaching you head on about it would be the right call, because I didn't want you to feel like I was attacking you.
Yeah.
And because I didn't want to make things worse. I just, you know, but I could kind of see in that moment that brought, like, I was like, hey, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
I could feel in your eyes, I could see that you were kind of like, what did I just do? But also kind of like, well, I already did it. And I don't know if that's how you were feeling, but that's kind of how I perceived it. And I was like, well, it's his battle. And I already asked him what he's doing. I'm not, what am I supposed to, like, pin you down and take the drink from you?
Right.
Couldn't if I wanted to.
Well, you didn't have to. It was enough that I mean, this is probably for a later time in broadcast that um, it slapped me mentally and emotionally, and therefore I was able to say, "What am I really doing? What is this about?" And then I was
Mhm.
able to start talking to my sponsor the next day, and I was able to start being honest about some things that I had pent up inside me that were like driving me in that direction. Because the one thing that I know about myself, and I'm not probably much different than a lot of other alcoholics, is that once I start isolating my feelings and my thoughts inside, eventually they're going to blow up in a way like I'm drinking or I'm doing something crazy or I'm trying to I'm violent for some reason or whatever. And I've inventoried all of that stuff. Since you're asking me about inventorying emotions, that's what I do today. Um, I have been giving a design for living, and as long as I follow that, I never need drink or drug or whatever again. I also have better decisions. I also have people who love me, and the police are not looking for me today. I promise you. So,
That's good.
yes. Anyway,
That's good.
so after that debacle, I have not been drinking since. So that's yay. I am actually I'm Jonathan's designated. Which is
That's
good.
great.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
Because he's smart enough to know that if I'm going to have a beer, I don't want to be driving. I want somebody else to get me, you know? So that's awesome, you know?
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
So John's probably going to edit that out. That's fine.
no, I think keep it. But I did want to ask one other question, which is in
Sure.
regards to all of that, which was, you know, I remember the kind of the week or so, the days kind of leading up to you taking that drink. And I kind of could tell that something with like there was some obviously you and I we would have these like late night talks and whatnot, right? And but I could tell that there was something else that was going on that you either didn't feel comfortable talking to me about it or just talking about it at all.
Right.
Because you remember that there was a point where like you couldn't get a hold of your sponsor.
Yep.
And so I wanted to ask, was it truly that you couldn't get a hold of your sponsor? Or was it more like you didn't really want to talk to him
I
kind of as
don't
a
think I had
like
been
a
completely
caveat?
honest with him about feelings and emotions, but I had been talking to him on a weekly basis. But I had not done what he asked me to do, which was get highly involved in the 12-step program that was happening out there in Austin and the the place where we were living. So I would go to a meeting, but I wasn't really connecting with people because they just, in my mind, they weren't my people, you know?
Yeah,
So that was what was happening there. Would like to talk about this truth thing for a second, if you don't mind.
go ahead.
So, one thing that I have learned in my time of not only being sober, but having a relationship with God, my God. I don't really care who anybody here believes in because I believe that if you're truly looking to have a personal relationship with a God, if you're truly looking for that, then you'll find the right one because I only believe there is one. So yeah, I know I'm kind of a soloist in that part, but um, honesty has got to be the door that opens everything in life. And what I mean by that is if I have a map and I want to get to New York City, but I think I'm in Austin, but in reality, I'm in Miami. The question that I have to ask is am I ever really truly going to make it to New York City using that map? And the answer is no. If I have a faulty perception of myself, my situation, my circumstances, And I'm trying to get to somewhere using that thought process. Well, I don't see it happening. I don't see me being success in life if I think I'm already a success. If I think that I'll give you a great example. When I graduated high school, I got accepted to a few universities. I got accepted to UNO, UNL, Creighton, and UNLV. In my pea brain, I thought I'm going to UNLV because I can go there and I can party and I can go to school at the same time. Not so. I cannot do that. Maybe somebody else can. Maybe. I don't know. But what I call that today is a cognitive distortion. I have two competing ideas, and in my brain, they seem like they can go together. But in the reality of what we do, they can't. I cannot party and go to school and be a success at school. I just can't. But I thought I could. So, in order to become something different, first we have to know what we actually are. I'm a murderer. I'm an armed robber, but I just don't want to be. It doesn't matter that I can talk about, oh, I'm this or that. I can walk through life and say, hey, I'm a good guy. Cleveland, I'm not a good guy. I'm a healthier guy today. I'm a sick guy at heart. Thank God I take spiritual medicine, or the world would not get the version of me that they're getting right now. And it's the same way for anybody else. The version that we see of those people, most of the time we see them way clearer than they can see themselves. So,
I think
all right.
that's, I
Should I get
think
off my
that
soapbox now?
no, but I think that that is something that everybody should take in and reflect on every day, right? It's just that people see us mm, more clearly than we can see ourselves. Because I feel like sometimes we're definitely in our head. And especially when we've been through things that we might be ashamed of, or we've done things that we're ashamed of, it can be something that's just always weighing us down.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, we can't change it. So what we need to do is stand on it and not let it be the thing that weighs us down, and not let it be the thing that defines us, but the thing that we take and use to make ourselves better with, I
Mm-hmm.
believe.
So you were talking about standing on the truth in your own life and what you've learned about that. Well, I had learned to use an expression by the SEALs, which was embrace the suck. Meaning, hey, life is horrible. Embrace the worst part of it and make it your friend. And when you make it your friend, it won't suck. And they live by that. And early on, I did that mentally and emotionally because I didn't have much of a choice. Because I'm going to tell you, when I got sober, I was at the point before I went to that church service that night. I had two thoughts in my head. One, tell the people that I owed, forget you, get it the way Mike Tyson got his belt. And they probably would have put a hard piece of sharp steel inside my body multiple times if I had said that to them.
Oh, absolutely.
But my fear wasn't that they would do that, but it was that they would mess it up. And I would still be living with life and 40 years run box card and then be an invalid. The other thought was I could jump on the fence and make the guard shoot me off. Again, what if I don't die? Where does that leave me? So I've got two opposing fears. So when that guy asked me, "Hey, you want to go to church?" It was like I got a better thought in my head. No, I do not.
Whoa. So your fear at that point wasn't dying. Your fear at that point was surviving something that would leave you worse off than what you already were.
Absolutely. But if I had not been in that place, Cleveland, all of it set me up. All the experiences that I had in my life up until that point put me in a place where I could truly ask God to change me and be willing to do whatever that entailed afterwards. And that was not, of course, not easy. So, is there something else you wanted to ask about
Yes,
that
I have a
stuff?
couple more questions.
Lots of questions.
No, well, because we said I'm gonna have these questions, but and you told me get some follow-up questions ready. But the truth is that some of these follow-up questions are things that I can only ask after I hear what you have to say. Otherwise,
That is
I'm just
true.
like otherwise it's not authentic and we want it to be authentic. But this one is
Yes,
one
ma'am.
of the ones that I have scripted. So how do you see the difference now between human justice in court and God's ultimate justice?
That's deep. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I had to come to a spot in my life where I looked at the victim of my crime and see him as a victim. I've told you about the unwanted advances, but for a long time, before I was able to touch what truth really is, all I could see was all the justification and the reasons why what I did to this person really wasn't that bad because he was a really, really nasty person. And there was a lot of people that would have gave me a medal for things that, because of the things that he had committed and been convicted of.
So I think here is a place where we have to talk without filter because I don't want people getting the wrong idea, right? Because
Right.
we with something that we talked about previously, right? I don't want people getting the wrong idea because you previously also mentioned that you surrounded yourself by, other people, different types of people that you probably wouldn't today. Knowing you, I know you wouldn't. But we have to talk without that filter. So going kind of touching back with exactly what happened that night and the charges that he was, you know, of who he was, this person that what we know of him. Let's talk about that with no filter because I think it is necessary.
Okay. Um, when I was arrested and I first met my lawyers, the first thing that they told me was that, well, you could have killed somebody worse. You just killed a convicted child molester. That's all. So I had not known that though when I killed this man. There was no justification. Had I known it, might it have made a difference? The man did make unwanted homosexual advances towards me. Um, I think the guy had a lot of sexual problems, but that was had nothing to do with what I did. I chose that night to decide that he did not need his money. I chose to go up and rob him, and that led to his death by my hand. He is, was, and always will be the victim of my crime. That I want to make clear. Was the man a very unfavorable and undesirable person for almost anybody in this life? Yes. Yes, he was. Okay. But I don't at any time want anybody to think that I am not guilty of what happened. And had he not been guilty of those crimes, the same result would have happened. That was a truth that I have to deal with for the rest of my life. Mostly because murder is the only thing you can steal when you steal a person's life that cannot be repaid. It cannot. I can steal your money. You can get it back. Your car. I could steal your husband. I mean, or your spouse or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm saying that, but you could get another one. You could win that person back. You could, there's a lot of things that could go on that replaces that value. You can't replace life. I'm not God. I wish that I was, because I would have brought that guy back that night. The day I got arrested, I would have, for different reasons than now. Now I have more altruistic reasons. Then it would have been just so I got out of trouble. When I was 19, I could not grasp the gravity of what it meant to have a human life and how valuable it was, because we call this broadcast deemed redeemable. But once that man died, there was no redemption for him. And I have dealt with the fact that I will never know until I leave this life, that, at least I believe, which way he went, up or down. Something that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
I have to deal with, not you have to deal with. I have to deal with it. And I'm grateful for God's grace. Grateful.
All right. Well, I think that answers my last question, which is very straightforward, which is, do you believe God used prison as a place to confront you with the truth?
No,
No. Okay. Right.
no. So I wanted to mention this earlier when we were talking about how bad people can be and the things that they can do. God didn't send me to prison. I sent me to prison. I made choices that night. I had made millions of choices up to that point that put me in the position where I made that specific decision to do things. When I was a kid, I could have told you, I could have talked to people about the being molested at 4 years old. Okay. Where I had a problem with the idea of homosexuality before that, but I didn't, because I was scared. Is that completely my fault? No, but I had an option to talk to somebody and I didn't. People tried to reach out to me. I had a violent streak. When I was in the Marine Corps, they wanted me to go to treatment and I did not. I chose drinking over my Marine Corps career. That was what I did. I had options. You have options today. Everybody has options. We don't have to live in the mess. Misery is completely optional. We have options. But I didn't take them. So did God use prison? No, he did not. I do not believe for 1 second that it was his idea. Oh, I'm going to send Ken to prison, and then we're going to get him slapped awake mentally and spiritually and emotionally, and then we'll get him right. I don't think he had that thought at all. I think his ultimate thought was for him and me to have a relationship from the time that I first met him at 7 years old, and to never have a problem like that. That's what I believe. And did he stop loving me, caring for me, being there for me when I called out to him? No. When I cursed him, did he? No, he didn't let me go. He just waited for me to call back out to him. That's it.
that kind of also ties in into the question that I asked previously, which was the how do you see the difference now between human justice and God's ultimate justice? I feel like that also answers that question very well. And it also kind of reminds me of a point in my life where that was also true, where I was so angry at the world for things that also happened to me. And I was angry with God because I I was young, but I didn't understand how it was possible bad things happen to good people. And, I was a child, so in my brain, I didn't understand that we have free will and there are people who choose to do bad things. And it it took me a lot of therapy for one, but also self-reflection and conversations with myself and with God to realize that being mad at him wasn't going to fix anything. That I needed to have those honest conversations with myself and basically talk my way through my feelings to get to a better place, which I feel like I've done. And I feel like that's also been your process. That's also been how you've gotten better, how you've come to terms with your addictions and your actions and everything leading up to this point of who you are in life, right?
Hmm. It's funny though that when we become ready for truth and truth cleans out the garbage inside us, okay, and there's a hole left, what the right stuff will fit in that hole inside us. But we still have to say, ooh, let's take it. It's like taking fast food or garbage food and trying to eat on this and you feel horrible and stuff. You can stop eating that stuff, but you still got to put in the good stuff,
Yeah.
you know, the lettuce and all that stuff that
Be
doesn't
careful.
taste.
Mhm. That's funny. Because your nephew has an aversion to he absolutely hates asparagus and
Oh,
what's the other
that's my favorite.
I love that stuff, but he hates it. And what are those little I can't think of it.
Brussels sprouts.
Yes, I love them. I love
That's because of his grandmother.
yeah, okay.
I can still hear her, eat your Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, oh, he hates them, but I try to feed them to him at least once a month. But he
Uh, use the balsamic reduction stuff in it
I do.
and
He
and
hates it.
and grill them, change the whole flavor of them. That's
I
all I can tell
know.
you.
I
My
know.
wife does that. It's awesome.
I took him for our anniversary. I took him to this place here in Austin called Peach Tortilla. They serve the Brussels sprouts that way, and I was like, "You just have to try them. I know that you're gonna love them the way they taste here." And to me, they're magnificent. He had one bite, and he was like, "That's disgusting."
He couldn't get the thought out of his mind of what it was.
No, he was like, "They still taste like Brussels sprouts." I was like, "Okay, well,
Oh
I
well,
tried.
that's all you can do.
I tried." Well, thank you for listening to Deemed Redeemable. Join us next time as we continue to, go through the story and get to know Ken a little bit more. Um, I'm Cleveland.
And I'm Kenneth. And in the next time, we're going to discover what it means to actually practice hope.
See you next time, guys.